Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And in general, I like to keep that world from getting too dystopian. I know that's not easy these days, and it's even harder in the world of movies, TVs, books, and comics. There are just so many forces dragging us down that dark path. But at least in the world of fiction, we can get a damn good story out of it. And in terms of cinematic history, the Terminator franchise holds a special place, albeit one that has been complicated in recent years. A lot. Now, I'll go on record as saying I love the Terminator movies. And yes, that includes the ones that fans and critics love to hate. I was also a huge fan of the Sarah Connors Chronicles. I still hated how that series ended prematurely. And I'll proudly proclaim that Terminator 2 Judgment Day is the greatest action movie of all time. But this isn't about that cinematic masterpiece. I know it's hard to talk about anything Terminator without talking about its crowning achievement. To some extent, it's because that movie was so perfect that every sequel that has come out since then has just struggled to further the franchise. Each one, starting with Rise of the Machines, tried to launch a new trilogy to expand the story. All of them failed. And they failed for various reasons too. However, I'd like to make the argument that one sequel came very close to succeeding, more so than any others. In terms of plot, theme, implication, and character, one Terminator sequel had all the necessary ingredients to take this franchise to a new level. It just didn't get the chance, and for reasons I feel were unwarranted. That movie is Terminator Genisys. To fellow fans of both the Terminator franchise and action movies, please hear me out. I expect plenty of dissent in the comments, but first, let me make my case. Now, Terminator Genisys has a mixed and muddled reputation among Terminator fans. Whenever I go on message boards or Reddit, I see a wide range of opinions. There are those who just flat out hate it, but for somewhat shallow reasons. But I also get the sense that most were just indifferent to this movie. They saw it as just another attempt to revitalize a franchise that was long past its prime. And it certainly didn't help that both Rise of the Machines and Terminator Salvation failed to excite anyone. Now there are many reasons for this. I'll touch on a few, but the shortcomings of those movies helped stack the deck against Genisys. But within the deficiency of those movies is where I feel Genisys really shows its strengths. Because like every Terminator movie, the plot involves time travel. And time travel plots always get convoluted to some extent. But Genisys takes a different approach from its predecessors. Whereas Rise of the Machines and Salvation primarily dealt with one timeline, Genisys introduces the concept of multiple timelines. Yes, that adds complexity, but no more than other time travel movies like it, a la Back to the Future 2. Now initially, Genisys closely follows the established events of the first two Terminator movies. John Connors and the Resistance go into the final battle against Skynet. Kyle Reese, his father, although he doesn't know it yet, is by his side every step of the way. Together, they defeat Skynet and find the time machine, and it's up to Kyle to go through, save John's mother, and stop the Terminator sent to kill her. These are all important events in Terminator lore. Genisys affirms the importance of those events, something that neither Rise of the Machines or Salvation did to any meaningful extent. But things change suddenly once Skynet pulls one last trick, and it's here where Genisys really sets itself apart. You see, in every other failed sequel, the story often had a fatal flaw. Rise of the Machines, Salvation, and most recently Terminator Dark Fate could not avoid it. What they did in the eyes of Terminator fans was unforgivable. They all devalued Sarah and John's triumph at the end of Terminator 2. In each one of those other movies, beating Skynet didn't change a goddamn thing. Either Judgment Day still happens, or something just as bad as Skynet comes along, like Legion. This renders Sarah, John, and Kyle's story irrelevant and inconsequential. It retroactively makes their efforts in the first two Terminators movies an act of pure futility. What they did, what they experienced and sacrificed, it didn't matter in the end. All it did was delay the inevitable. The whole no fate but what we make just becomes moot. But what Genisys did was both novel and cunning. The events that unfold in this movie cannot happen unless Terminator 2 played out exactly as it did. What happens with Skynet isn't a matter of fate, it's a conscious choice, one made by Skynet. To some extent, it's more recourse than a reaction. Skynet sees that it failed to prevent John's birth, and it also failed to take him out when he was a kid. Now, it's painfully clear that it can't kill John Connors in the past or the present. So, following its cold, hard computer logic, it surmises that the only way to win this war and ensure its survival is to become John Connors. It's by far the most controversial aspect of the movie. The idea of John becoming Skynet, and the villain by default, just didn't sit well with fans who grew to love him in Terminator 2. And I understand that sentiment. But in terms of plot and premise, this actually works. Tactically, thematically, and conceptually, it makes sense within the overall story structure. Skynet just can't keep doing what hasn't worked before. And for Sarah and Kyle, just ensuring the birth of John Connors isn't enough anymore. Now, they have to do more than just survive. They have to fight back and save this new timeline. It brings out the best in both of them. It gives Kyle a chance to protect Sarah in a new way. It also gives Sarah a chance to be the tough-nosed fighter we saw in Judgment Day. While, yes, Emilia Clarke is no Linda Hamilton, she proves her toughness throughout this movie. Then, there's their Schwarzenegger-modeled 101 ally, Pops. He, in my opinion, is what gives Genisys its dramatic weight. He recaptures one of the most important themes from Judgment Day. In that movie, the Terminator sent to protect John develops a close emotional bond with him. The more he's around him, the more human he becomes. Genisys takes that a step further. By going back to protect a young Sarah Connors, he didn't just develop a bond with her, he became a father figure. Their dynamic was both sincere, heartfelt, and funny at times. There are plenty of hints throughout the movie that show the strength of their bond. And, like Judgment Day, there were still some lingering trust issues, especially once Reese entered the picture. This powerful element, a Terminator developing a close bond with these characters, is central to the drama that makes the Terminator story work so well. Neither Rise of the Machines nor Terminator Salvation made that effort. Terminator Dark Fate tried, but failed because those bonds were so poorly constructed, and by the time that movie ended, those bonds had exhausted all their potential. But by the time Genisys ends, you get the sense that this is the making of a new family, as well as a new mission against Skynet. It's not just more satisfying in that it ends the story on a more hopeful note, it opens the door for an entirely new arc for the Connor family. Now, thanks to Genisys, they face a new version of Skynet, one born in the age of the internet. And unlike the first movies, they're all in that fight together. Imagine the stories that can come from that, such as one where Kyle and Sarah keep trying to track Skynet, falling more and more in love in the process despite knowing where that leads. Now imagine another where they both try to raise baby John together, teaching and nurturing him to be the leader that we all grew to love in Terminator 2. Imagine a story where Pops has to wrestle with his purpose, torn between the bonds he's formed with his family and his programming. Helping them may nullify his existence, but helping Skynet means losing those he cares about. There's just so much to work with here. Drama, romance, high concepts regarding fate, choice, and agency. Genisys created a foundation ripe with potential, one that could have carried a fleet of movies and maybe even a TV series like the Sarah Connor Chronicles. Sadly, we never got any of that. Now, some of that was beyond anyone's control. Short of grossing $1 billion at the box office, I don't think the movie would have prompted that kind of investment from the studio or from fans. And this is another one of those movies that I feel people decided to hate before they ever saw it. And after the previous two attempts, I understand that to some extent. At the same time, this movie did have some other flaws, some of them fairly major. The biggest, in my opinion, was how many plot holes were left in on purpose, mostly to set up a sequel. From Who Sent Pops to how Dyson set up shop in 2017, a lot was left unanswered. It's a problem that has plagued every Terminator movie since Judgment Day. They focus so much on setting up a sequel that they forget to tell a concise, satisfying story in a single movie. And unless you're in a full-scale cinematic universe like Marvel, that approach just doesn't work. I also think the casting for Genisys was subpar at best. Now personally, I loved Emilia Clarke as Sarah Connors. I think she really owned that role. But Jai Courtney as Kyle Reese and Jason Clarke as John Connor, they weren't terrible, but they weren't great either. they did not carry their roles with the same charisma as Linda Hamilton or Edward Furlong. Even with Schwarzenegger returning, the cast just wasn't strong enough. There were other issues with this movie, but they were minor for the most part, especially when compared to the other sequels. Dark Fate, Salvation, and Rise of the Machines all had some major flaws. They killed beloved characters. They tried to force certain plot points that just didn't fit. They tried adopting an overall tone that just didn't work. If we're going to judge a Terminator movie by how well it meshes with the first two, Genisys, in my opinion, is the only one that really fits. I won't say it's a perfect fit, but it does fit. If you were to watch it after the first two movies, it would still feel like a coherent story, and it could have opened up a whole new world for the franchise to explore. Maybe in another timeline, it would have succeeded. I guess we'll never know. And with the failure of Dark Fate, I genuinely worry that this franchise will never recover. But even if it doesn't, we'll always have Terminator 2 Judgment Day. That movie is a masterpiece in any timeline. Thanks for watching, everybody, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, hasta la vista, baby.